Grief changes your life 100%. It changes so many things about you. But there's one thing that I always say, no matter who you were before the grieving experience, and what I'm specifically speaking about is no matter what your character is. So whoever you are in your character, that is 100% the way that you grieve. So for example, if you're a completely selfish person in your character and in your life, you grieve as a selfish person. And actually it makes the worst part of you come up to the surface. I believe that whatever you have in there that you still needed to work on in your character and traits, it makes that come out. And what things that people didn't like about you, they see them tenfold. It's like it enters the room 10 minutes before you do. Your ego, if you have a big ego, if you have a big head, all of those things happen. So, and the truth is, if you're a shitty person, you're going to grieve as a shitty person. That's all it is. But if you're a really nice, sweet person, you grieve as a really nice, sweet person. And if that is not you.
That is me. I'm so nice and sweet.
Oh my gosh, sneaky. And if you're that really nice, sweet person, you sort of negate your grief and start worrying about everybody else's grief. So it's interesting to see your character exposed in your grieving experience.
That is so true. I believe that 100%. So I share all the time, that I'm a reality TV junkie. And recently, at one of the housewives shows that I've been watching, there's a woman on there who has been exhibiting extremely nasty behavior. I mean, just toxic. And when people address it, she starts crying and blaming it on the grief that she's experiencing from the loss of her mother. And it's just, to me, I'm like dumbfounded, because I was like, can you really do that? Can you really blame your bad behavior on grief as an excuse for why you're being a shitty human? Like, I guess you can, because it's happening, and people, I'm sure, do it all the time.
Well, that's really funny that you said that, because people blame everything on grief.
Yeah.
They blame a lot of stuff on their grieving experience, or even months later, they still are blaming the things on the grief, which I think is another show all into itself. Okay, so let me just take my own character trait. My character trait is normally, I call it being strong, is to be really strong, to try to step up, to kind of be a leader in that sort of thing.
Otherwise known as bossy. Yes.
I just wrote that down. But you guys call it bossy. Can I finish my sentence, please?
Sorry. Just want to make sure you were telling the truth.
But you guys call it bossy. And so when we're talking about the character trait totally coming out, like immediately you go to that part in your character and it comes out full-fledged. You said that you're more of a what other people think sort of person. And so that kind of came out. It's like, oh my gosh, is she comfortable? Is she comfortable? It's the reason why when you went to the grief support groups, you were more worried about the other people in the group and how they were doing than how you were doing. You were making sure they had the help that they needed for their grief. I have a client right now, and the father tends to be really selfish. He was very selfish his whole entire life. He's an only child. She calls it selfish, so I'm going to call it that. And he is 100% grieving that way. Mm-hmm. Now, in the show that you're watching, you were sharing to me that she's actually a bully.
Yes.
She's actually a bully. And that trait, that character trait, has come out full-fledged, but yet she's blaming it on the grief.
Yeah, she is. Because it's like, this is the thing. It's not uncommon, and we've shared a lot, for the anger to come out. I was so angry after Donovan passed away, and it did bleed out into my relationship with Lewis, my relationship with the kids. But once I did the work, that went away. It wasn't still me. She's just targeting one specific person and calling it the grief. No, that's bullying. That's not you grieving, because it would be bleeding out into all areas. You would be angry towards your husband, you'd be angry towards your other friends, not just one specific person, and then saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm managing the best I can. My mom died. That's not okay. That is not okay. Yeah. So that's how I make the differentiation, because yes, it's possible for you to act up. And so when you made the thing about excusing it, the kids like to hold me accountable for stuff that I did after Donovan died, especially when I was really, really struggling. And that's my excuse. I'll tell them, I was grieving. I'm sorry.
It's like on TikTok where the lady goes, "I'm just a baby." The little girl's like, "I'm just a baby. I'm grieving." Oh my
Exactly.
God, we had to get that on a t-shirt. I'm grieving. So we can use it as a, you can't use grieving as an excuse for
No.
your bad.
No.
You can't. You cannot. Can you have moments and outbursts? 100%. Can you have outbursts multiple days in a row? Absolutely. Can you have an outburst by someone who's trying to help you? We were recently in with a client and I tried to ask her a tough question and she totally came at me. And then I think because I was shocked that she came at me so fast, I tried to calm the situation with a smile, which made it even worse. Can and she tried multiple times to apologize and she didn't need to apologize. Can you attack somebody in your grief? Yes, you totally can. Someone could say something that you hear wrong. I remember them saying, asking the question, who is responsible when we were in our work? And I heard that wrong. And I still often share this story when we're doing our work. I heard that wrong. I attacked our grief specialist. It happens. But here's the deal. That's a one-off.
Right.
It's just a one-off. That's all it is. That is your pain of your grief coming to the surface and boiling over. If you're just a bitch, you're just a bitch. You
Right.
just need to call it out for what it is.
Yeah. Because we have had the experience of being with someone who's grieving and they totally act like we haven't had a grieving experience. They act like their grieving experience trumps ours, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
but that's, like you said, speaking to their character. Those
Yeah.
people are selfish individuals and they'll never give anyone else any room or space for whatever they're going through. It's all about just that person. And that's happened quite a bit. But it's not an excuse to be a nasty person, to say nasty things on a regular basis to multiple people in your life. That's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You end up alienating yourself from everybody who could be there to help you. The griever, we talk about this all the time, needs to talk, but they also need to be listened to. Well, if you're going to be crappy to everybody, nobody's going to want to listen to you. They don't want to hear it. The other thing is that what you were tiptoeing on what you were saying, and I said selfish. If you get to the point where you're so selfish and you think no one's grief is as bad as yours,
Right.
or no one will understand how badly you feel, number one, you're comparing. Do not compare your grief to someone else's. Just don't do it. It's not right. I cannot compare the grief of losing Austin as his aunt to the grief of losing Austin as his mother. I had no idea what that experience was like for you, but I know what it was like for me, right? And so don't compare. But here's the other thing that will happen. When you start comparing and feeling like your grief is deeper than anyone else's in the room, you can get stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
You can get stuck into grief and never do your healing work because you just think it's so bad you'll never move beyond it.
And I think you can get stuck in all the bad behavior because people don't push back on you, especially if it's a new grieving experience. They give you a lot of grace and they will explain it away as, oh, she's just really having a hard time right now. But 5 years later, when you're still having that hard time, that's not okay. That is
I don't want to be
not
friends with
okay.
you.
Yeah, no, people, they're not going to call you. They're not going to check on you
Yeah.
because they're like, no,
Yeah.
you're just a bitch.
Well, they're justifying it.
Right.
They justify their bad behavior, right? And so, and they absolutely think it's okay. So I don't watch this show. So apparently she's going after one girl. You said she's going after one lady a lot. And then when they try to call her out, she's totally about, what's my grief? It's my
Oh,
grief.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm grieving. It's like, I'm totally my grief. No, you're using your grief as an excuse.
Right. Right. Instead of speaking your truth, which would be so much better, and say, you know what? I just don't like you. You and I just don't gel. You're not my cup of tea. And then you move on with your life. But to not say those words and just emit all this hostility and rage towards the one person, that is bullying.
Yeah. Yeah. So you end up becoming a bully, which, just on a side note to that, the producers and directors, they probably love all the
Oh yeah, well,
energy,
that's the
the
purpose
negative
of the
energy
show.
that's
Yeah,
coming out of the show, right? So all of this negative energy is coming out about around the, and she's using the grief as an excuse, or she's using the grief, not a, maybe she doesn't think it's an excuse. She's using the grief to talk about that. And they love that that negative energy is coming out about it instead of going after the true healing.
right,
That's
right.
another thing. That's, gosh, that's terrible.
There's a lot of times, so I watch all kinds of different reality shows. I don't know why they appeal to me, but they do.
I
I think
don't
because
either.
it's their drama and not mine, so I get to watch
I
it.
don't know.
But there's so many times on different shows, like even Bar Rescue. Have you ever watched that? That's a good show. And where they go in
No.
and they fix up the bar. But there's a lot of times the owners struggle with their own alcoholism
Yeah.
because their businesses are failing. And I am
Yeah.
looking at it as a grief specialist saying,
Yeah.
deal with his grief. If you go
Yeah.
after his grief, he could turn this
Yeah.
around. And
Yeah.
there was one time I did see the guy um, find a counselor for a woman. I think she had opened the bar with her dad or something. And he really honed in that it was her grief that was preventing her from running a successful business. And he did get her help. And I was so impressed by that because most of the times, like you said, the producers want the drama, they want the
Yeah.
ratings. And for this particular housewife show, they're getting a lot of buzz on social media because of all this negative behavior. So that's what
Check
they're
this
looking
out.
for.
If she worked on her grief with her mom, she probably also has grief against that girl. Something is triggering her.
Yeah.
She'd come back too nice for the show.
Right? Exactly. Then she'd get fired.
Which should be another grieving experience.
What do you mean you're healed? You're fired.
I mean, if she really went after the grief for the mom, what's going to show up is whatever is coming up, these triggers for this young woman, and then they really wouldn't want her for the show. Okay, so I want to circle back to this. Grief makes you have out of body experiences.
Yeah.
So you act in ways that you normally didn't, you aren't used to or accustomed to acting. It can cause you to go off on someone, cuss someone out, yell and scream at someone. Can it cause you to do that? 100%. Can it cause you to do that day in and day out to everyone you meet? No.
Right.
That's you. That's part of your character. That's part of your character flaw. And you need to go after the grief and you need to be aware of it.
Right. Because what happens, like you said, getting stuck in it, then you become the grief queen. And if you want to go to that podcast, because we already recorded it,
Yeah.
then you become the grief queen and you want to make it all about you and your grief and shit on everybody else. And that's not right.
So I want to ask you a question though. Why do you think when you were in the support group, you were all worried about everybody else's group, yet you felt it very comfortable to take it out on Kayla and Jordan? Can you make a
I
connection?
felt comfortable, you said?
Yeah, to snap at them.
Well, when I was doing the grief group, that was after Austin.
Yeah.
After Donovan, I wasn't doing any work. I was just resisting and stuffing all my emotions and living in the anger. So it was any little thing was setting me off because I wasn't doing any of my work. So that was the difference. I was
Yeah.
negating the much needed work I needed to do and just stuffing and watching too much reality TV. And
So we're
so
going to talk about that on the next show.
so that was the difference there. It was the two different grieving experiences. I didn't do any grief group after Donovan. I would have probably bit some of their heads off.
Because biting people's head off is not your MO.
No.
Yeah. So so that's a perfect example. That was truly coming from the anger, which was coming from the grief, which was pointed at Donovan.
Yeah. I generally lead from compassion and empathy, and I always try to see it from the other person's point of view and put myself in their shoes. If I feel wronged, like, okay, what maybe it was something else they were going through before I bite. But Lewis swears I bite his head off all the time. So I don't know, maybe there's something there I got to work on. But no, I generally lead with compassion and try and have empathy for whatever instead of going with anger first.
Yeah. I think the fact that you can call it out, that you're out of character, knows that, something was off there. So friends, you don't get to act ugly and mean just because.
Right. Grief is not an excuse for bad behavior.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Have a great day, friends.
Bye, friends.